Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking the highly technical, absolutely fascinating world of Oregon wine and turning it into an accessible, practical journey. You see, Oregon isn't just another wine region. It's this surgically precise ecosystem that's actually earned the nickname of the New Old World, sitting on the exact same latitudinal signature as Burgundy, France. We're going to look at exactly what makes their Pinot Noir world-class by breaking down the complex intersection of geology, climate, and human philosophy.
To make sense of this intricate system, we are transforming all this complex data into a highly practical, step-by-step guide. We're taking you all the way from prehistoric dirt and cataclysmic floods right through to a perfectly balanced, sustainable glass of wine.
So, here's our literal roadmap for today. We'll be hitting the geological foundation, mastering the microclimate, precision vine management, minimalist cellar techniques, and finally sustaining the future.
All right, step 1, the geological foundation.
To really understand the dirt, we have to go way back, like 15,000 years back, to the ancient Missoula Floods. Imagine this. At the end of the last ice age, a massive ice dam broke in what is now Montana. It released a volume of water equal to 10 times the flow of all the world's rivers combined. No, seriously. As those cataclysmic floodwaters swept into the Willamette Valley and eventually receded, they dropped this incredibly complex patchwork of rich sediments right over the ancient underlying volcanic rock. That violent history is exactly what created the unique, fragmented terroir we see there today.
And that violent history left behind 3 fundamental soil types. The dirt you're standing on directly translates to what hits your palate. First, you've got Jory soils. These are born from ancient volcanic basalts. They're super rich in iron, and they give you bright cherry, floral notes, and silky tannins. Then there's Willakenzie soil, ancient uplifted seabeds that force the vine roots to dig deep. That gives you a muscular, darker fruit structure with notes of blackberry and cedar. Finally, laurelwood is made of wind-blown silt called loess, and it offers this distinct signature of damp earth and a really beautiful textural finish.
Moving right along to step 2, mastering the microclimate.
Okay, so Oregon is a coastal state, right? But the Willamette Valley is surprisingly protected. The Coast Range basically acts as a giant physical shield. It stands tall, completely blocking the most severe Pacific storms and all that excessive maritime rainfall. This rain shadow effect is absolutely crucial. It provides a stable, dry growing period during flowering and ripening, which lets these super temperamental Pinot Noir grapes actually mature safely.
So, with all that protection, how do you keep the grapes from just baking into jam during the summer heat? Well, enter the absolute magic of the Duzer Corridor. It's this natural geographical gap in the Coast Range. On hot summer afternoons, the warm air in the valley rises, and it creates a literal vacuum that forcefully sucks cold, dense ocean air right in from the Pacific. This dramatically cools the vines down at night, slowing sugar development and preserving the grape's vibrant, crystalline malic acidity. Plus, and this is fascinating, that constant stress from the wind actually forces the grapes to develop thicker skins. That's what gives Oregon Pinot Noir its incredible color and structural tannins.
Next up, step 3, precision vine management.
Now, because Oregon still gets significant rainfall and humidity, uncontrolled vine growth creates this shaded, damp microclimate, and that is basically a perfect incubator for fungal diseases like botrytis. To prevent this, winemakers use highly strategic leaf removal. By opening up the canopy, they let filtered, not direct mind you, but filtered sunlight and air reach the bunches. This dries them out quickly, and the sunlight actually polymerizes or softens those aggressive green tannins while breaking down compounds that cause bitter or herbaceous flavors.
But honestly, all that pristine canopy management doesn't mean a thing without the right genetics. This brings us to what we call the clonal collage. Pinot Noir is famously unstable genetically, meaning there are hundreds of variations, or clones. Winemakers essentially pit the complex, earthy, delicate floral notes of older heritage clones, like Pommard and Wadenswil, against the super-reliable, darker fruit power and muscular structure of Dijon clones, like the 777 and 115. By strategically blending these in the vineyard, they build a complete, multi-layered sensory architecture before the grapes are even picked.
Which brings us to a million-dollar question. Once you've navigated the climate, the geology, and the canopy to harvest the perfect grape, how do you preserve its fragile soul once it enters the winery? Because Pinot Noir is notoriously unforgiving of any heavy-handedness.
That leads us nicely into step 4, minimalist cellar techniques.
First and foremost, Oregon strictly rejects massive corporate monocultures. They are all about a boutique philosophy. The average vineyard size here is remarkably small. We're talking just 12 to 15 hectares. And that limitation of scale, totally intentional.
It allows for a level of obsessive, manual quality control over tiny micro-lots, ensuring every single vine gets a massive amount of attention.
Inside the cellar, this boutique philosophy translates into strict minimalism. They use native wild yeasts that reflect that specific vineyard's exact terroir. They use cold soaking, meaning they chill the grapes down to between 4 and 10 degrees Celsius for days before fermentation, which gently extracts color and aroma without pulling harsh tannins. And crucially, they avoid heavy new oak. They want the wood to act as a subtle supporting beam, not a heavy blanket that dominates the delicate aromatic purity of the Pinot.
They also frequently use a technique called whole bunch fermentation. By leaving the grapes attached to their woody, fully ripened stems, they trigger a semi-carbonic intracellular fermentation inside the uncrushed grapes themselves. It's amazing. This adds incredibly complex notes of dry spices. Think nutmeg, white pepper, and clove. Furthermore, because stems are naturally alkaline, they act as a buffer, slightly raising the pH to soften the naturally high, vibrant acidity of the Oregon fruit. The result? A perfectly silky, vertical tannic backbone.
And finally, step 5, sustaining the future.
Unlike the secretive, cutthroat competition you might find in some other prestigious wine regions, Oregon thrives on this culture of radical collaboration. The fundamental belief here is that a rising tide lifts all boats. Neighbors literally openly share vital real-time data like Brix, sugar levels, and pH during harvest. They exchange protocols on yeast, they rent out their wildly expensive high-tech sorting equipment to smaller operations, and they dedicate massive amounts of time to mentoring new talent. It's this transparency that has rapidly elevated the global reputation of the entire state.
And they don't just protect each other. They mandate extreme environmental stewardship through the LIV certification, low-input viticulture and enology. This isn't just some plaque on the wall, guys. It forces vineyards to operate as entirely self-sustaining ecosystems. We're talking rich cover crops to build soil health naturally, deploying natural insect predators instead of spraying harsh chemicals, and leaving uncultivated land as actual ecological highways for the local wildlife.
And this ecological focus extends way beyond the vineyard rows to the surrounding waterways, specifically through the Salmon-Safe certification. This is unique to the Pacific Northwest. It strictly manages water runoff to protect native salmon. Wineries maintain dense native vegetation buffers along the riverbanks to filter out pollutants and physically shade and cool the water. They literally use the highly sensitive native salmon as the ultimate bio-indicator of their environmental health. If the salmon are thriving, the land is healthy, and the terroir remains pure.
So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. When you hold a glass of Oregon Pinot Noir, are you just tasting fermented fruit? Or are you tasting the legacy of a 15,000-year-old flood, the chill of the Van Duzer winds, the restraint of a boutique cellar, and the radical collaboration of a community fiercely protecting its home? Because in Oregon, the terroir isn't just the dirt, it's the entire interconnected ecosystem in every single drop. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope this gives you a whole new appreciation for the blueprint of the grape.